What if everything you thought you knew about Harry and Meghan's family was a carefully constructed illusion? What if their sweet, charitable visit to an LA community kitchen, complete with smiling children, warm embraces, and camera-ready compassion, wasn't about giving back at all, but about hiding something? And what if the real story didn't unfold in a press release or a polished video, but in a hushed whisper from a kitchen worker who saw something she wasn't supposed to? This isn't just another PR blunder. This is a full-blown credibility crisis, and it all unraveled in less than 10 minutes. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let's be honest, we've seen the Sussexes pull off plenty of staged moments before. From coordinated Netflix documentaries to overly scripted interviews, their brand is image management. They know how to control a narrative. But this time, the narrative slipped through their fingers. And when it did, something shocking came to light. The event seemed wholesome on the surface. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, alongside their two young children, Archie and Lilibet, spending a heartfelt day at a Los Angeles kitchen, giving back to the community. Cameras followed. Staff smiled. Archwell issued a glowing statement about the power of kindness and lifting up local heroes. It should have been a slam dunk. Instead, it sparked a firestorm. Because the moment wasn't just staged, it was suspicious. Something didn't sit right with the volunteers, the team, even casual observers online. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, a jaw-dropping claim began circulating. That little Lilibet Diana, the same child introduced to the world with floral filters and royal fanfare, may not be who she says she is. In fact, she might not even be a toddler at all, according to multiple sources, including whispers from staff present at the kitchen, PR insiders, and leaked communications. There's growing speculation that the child presented as Lilibet during this visit is actually 7 years old. Let that sink in. 7. That would mean she was born well before her official date, before the Oprah interview, before the Netflix deal, before the fairy tale even began. So now we're left with the question no one wants to ask. Who is she? And maybe more importantly, why lie? Is this a PR stunt gone wrong, or the unraveling of something much darker? Is the real Lilibet being hidden from the public? And if so, what are they hiding? Surrogacy secrets? Custody issues? A completely different origin story? We're not diving into mere gossip. This story matters because it cuts to the heart of media manipulation, family integrity, and the fine line between celebrity and deception. When public figures, especially ones tied to royalty, blur the line between authenticity and fiction, they don't just confuse the press, they mislead the world. And when children are used in that equation, the stakes skyrocket. Now here's where things get even more tangled. In the hours after the visit, eagle-eyed royal watchers began comparing photos. They noticed inconsistencies, from the child's size and facial structure, to her speech patterns, to how Harry and Meghan interacted with her. The usual warmth felt calculated, at times even cold. One volunteer claimed the child spoke with vocabulary far beyond a 2-year-old's. Another allegedly overheard Meghan snapping at someone for referring to Lilibet as a baby. Yet another swore they saw the child correct someone's grammar. Alarming? Maybe. Coincidence? Possibly. But then came the leaks. An anonymous staffer, now dubbed the kitchen whistleblower by Reddit sleuths, claimed that within just 10 minutes of their arrival, something felt very off. The energy changed. Whispers spread. One supervisor reportedly raised questions about the child's age, and when she was allegedly told to just stick to the script, she became suspicious. Soon after, someone, likely an intern, forwarded a chain of Archwell internal emails to a friend, and that friend leaked them online. Those emails will be discussed in detail later, but let's just say this. They don't paint a flattering picture. Suddenly, questions about Meghan's pregnancies re-emerged. Remember the speculation around her supposedly folding baby bump in 2019? Or how she was rarely photographed during the Lilibet pregnancy? The rumors of surrogacy, the tight-lipped birth announcements, the redacted hospital details? All of it rushed back to the surface. And then, right on cue, royal insiders began to whisper. Not on record, of course, the palace plays the long game. But off the record, you'd be stunned how many are saying they never believed the timeline added up to begin with. Here's where the emotional spike kicks in. If this child is 7, if the public has been shown staged, filtered, or even swapped images of someone else for years, then this isn't just about celebrity vanity. It's about trust. It's about what it means to put children in the spotlight as props. It's about ethics. Something the Sussexes claimed to hold above all else when they left the royal family. Because this would mean they didn't just flee the UK to protect their children's privacy. They fled to reshape their narrative entirely. And then there's the timing. Why stage this visit now? Why bring both children when they so rarely do? Some believe it was an attempt to pivot, to distract from recent PR disasters, failed deals, plummeting popularity, and mounting criticism over their authenticity. What better way to score headlines than a cute family photo op at a soup kitchen? Except it backfired. This wasn't a spontaneous visit. This was a precision-planned operation, complete with NDAs, rehearsed lines, and timed media releases. And still, the mask slipped. And now, social media isn't buying it. Even loyal Sussex fans are growing quiet. Reddit is ablaze with threads dissecting Lilibet's supposed age. TikTok influencers are comparing voice clips. Even mainstream outlets are circling the story cautiously, hinting at timeline inconsistencies without diving all the way in. Because they're scared. Scared of libel, sure, but also scared of what this might mean. If the theory is true, if Lilibet is 7, then who else is complicit? What networks covered it up? What agencies enabled the facade? And the biggest question of all, where is the real Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor? Or, is there even a real Lilibet to begin with? That's the mystery. And over the next hour, we'll pull every thread. We'll dissect the timeline. We'll analyze the leaked messages. We'll hear from insiders who witnessed the kitchen meltdown firsthand. We'll revisit Meghan's murky birthing history, dive into the conspiracies that are no longer fringe, and expose how one visit, just 10 minutes long, may have cracked open a story that's been tightly sealed for years. Because when kitchen staff start asking questions, and PR interns leak emails, and children start correcting grammar they shouldn't understand yet, something is very, very wrong. And the palace? Silent, as always. But they know. They've always known. And what happens next, what we're about to uncover, might just explain why they've never said her name in public. Not once. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when the story you're telling becomes too perfect, too choreographed, too polished for reality? Because let's be honest, there's a big difference between a heartfelt visit and a cinematic scene. And this wasn't charity. This was choreography. From the moment the Sussex convoy pulled up to the community kitchen in downtown Los Angeles, something felt off. Too smooth, too clean, too glossy. The lighting was perfect. The angles were carefully preset. The photographers? Already in position before the family even stepped out of the car. Tell me, have you ever seen a spontaneous act of service with a lighting crew? Let's rewind to the exact moment they arrived. Meghan stepped out first, wearing an immaculately tailored camel coat over a white blouse, hair down in soft curls, gold earrings glinting in the sunlight. Harry followed, dressed down in casual navy slacks and a relaxed linen button-up, playing the part of humble royal-turned-everyman. And then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Archie and Lilibet, walking between their parents, holding hands, all four of them framed perfectly in the glow of a Southern California afternoon. A camera clicked. Another word to life. Within seconds, Archwell had the images. And within minutes, those images were live on social media, wrapped in captions about giving back and building compassion through service. But here's the thing. None of it felt real. And we're not just talking about the performative smiles or the color-coordinated wardrobe. We're talking about the energy, the interactions, the way people were behaving. Volunteers had been told the night before that VIP guests were arriving. But what they didn't know, until it was far too late, was that they weren't just feeding the hungry that day. They were feeding a royal brand narrative. Catering, ironically, to the catered. At 10:15 a.m., a small team of handlers entered the kitchen and began rearranging stations. Someone adjusted the soup station's backdrop. Another assistant laid out fresh produce, reorganized for aesthetic symmetry. When a staff member asked what was happening, the answer was tight-lipped. High-profile guests. Just smile and follow instructions. And then, someone pulled out a call sheet. Yes, a call sheet. Like on a film set. It detailed arrival times, angles, staging areas, and, most bizarrely, several bullet points under the label child positioning. That's right. Not child safety. Not family coordination. Child positioning. If you're not disturbed by that yet, you should be. Because what followed looked less like a day of service and more like an audition. Each child was assigned a camera zone. Staff were told to avoid crossing behind them, to smile in proximity shots, and, get this, to avoid engaging with the children unless directly addressed. Who writes that about toddlers? And why would you need to? Unless, of course, something doesn't add up. Now here's where it gets strange. One of the volunteers, a woman in her mid-50s who'd worked at the kitchen for over 5 years, noticed something immediately. And it had nothing to do with cameras or production. It had to do with Lilibet. She just didn't act like a toddler, the woman would later say in an anonymous leak posted to a private Reddit thread. She was too self-aware. Like she knew exactly what to say, what not to touch, and how to move when the cameras were around. It was eerie. At first, the staffer dismissed it. Maybe the child was just unusually well-behaved, or gifted, or precocious. But then, Lilibet corrected someone. One of the younger volunteers, barely 19, asked her if she wanted to help with the little food packs, and Lilibet responded, in a sharp, articulate tone. Actually, they're called rations, and I'm not little. Everyone paused. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. No baby voice. No toddler mumble. Clear. Direct. Slightly annoyed. Now, you might be thinking, okay, maybe she's just a bright child. Lots of kids have advanced vocabularies. No big deal. But the kitchen workers couldn't stop whispering, especially the ones with kids of their own. She looked about 6, maybe 7, another volunteer claimed. Tall, confident, and the way she held herself. Like she'd been through rehearsals. The PR team didn't help. They hovered constantly. Every time someone tried to speak with the children, even just to offer them juice or a cookie, an Archwell handler would gently step in. No photos, please. Stay on script. Eyes forward. Again, we ask, this is a charity event, right? Why does it feel more like a royal press junket? Now, let's talk about Meghan. Observers say she was tense, hyper-aware, smiling, yes, but only when the cameras were raised. One kitchen staffer described her smile as mechanical, like it was flipped on and off at will. And every time someone mentioned Lilibet's age, whether in conversation or casual remark, Meghan's demeanor changed. She went cold, said one of the dishwashers, like someone had pressed a button. At one point, a staffer asked cheerfully, "So is she too now?" Meghan reportedly blinked, paused, then muttered something like, "She's where she needs to be." What does that even mean? Another staffer, this one new to the team and unaware of the protocol, asked to take a photo with the family after their service shift. Harry declined. Meghan offered a soft, maybe later. Then one of the PR staff stepped in and flat out said no. But here's the twist. While that staffer was leaving, she caught a glimpse of an iPad being used by one of the media handlers. On it was a live editing feed. Not just photos, but filters. Skin tone smoothing. Eye brightening. And in one particular frame, Lilibet's height had been subtly cropped. Let that sink in. They were actively adjusting the proportions of a child in real time. That's when the staffer began to ask around. Quietly, carefully, whispering in corners. How old is that girl really? Is it really Lilibet? Has anyone actually seen her before? The whispers grew louder. And soon, one of the senior volunteers pulled aside a kitchen director and asked a direct question. Do we know who these children are? The director, according to multiple accounts, didn't answer, just gave a tight smile and walked away. But it was too late. The seed of doubt had already been planted, because it wasn't just that Lilibet seemed older, or spoke too fluently, or acted rehearsed. It was the total control of her presence, the lack of spontaneity, the avoidance of unscripted interaction, the way handlers gently blocked her from interacting freely with other children in the room. Like they were protecting a secret, or hiding something. By the time the family left, barely 90 minutes after arriving, the kitchen had gone silent. No celebratory hugs. No lingering conversation. Just a chill that settled over the room. Because whether they wanted to admit it or not, everyone felt it. Something was off, and it had only taken 10 minutes to see it. So, was this a day of service? Or a day of smoke and mirrors? And if the latter, who was it really staged for? The media? The public? Or someone much closer, someone watching from behind palace gates? Because back in Windsor, there's one figure who stayed eerily silent about Lilibet's existence. He's never called her by name. He's never spoken of her in interviews. He's never acknowledged her birthday. That man is King Charles III, and what he's hiding may be more explosive than anyone ever imagined. But what came next would make even the palace go quiet. What if it only took 10 minutes to completely unravel a carefully woven fairy tale? What if, in the span of a coffee break, an entire brand built on transparency, service, and family unity started to crack, right in front of everyday people who were never meant to notice? Because that's exactly what happened inside the LA kitchen. This was supposed to be a soft press moment, a charitable appearance, a tightly managed glimpse into Harry and Meghan's post-royal lifestyle. Humble, giving, grounded. But what happened in those first 10 minutes set off a ripple effect of whispers, warnings, and, eventually, a whistleblower. And it started with a look. Not a shout, not a slip, just a single sideways glance from one of the kitchen staff, directed at another, just after hearing Lilibet speak. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but something in that moment said, "Did you hear that? That didn't sound like a 2-year-old." From there, it spread like wildfire. Because in a room full of volunteers, many of them parents, aunts, uncles, teachers, caregivers, you can't just walk in with a 7-year-old dressed like a toddler and expect nobody to blink. Not when she's using full sentences. Not when she carries herself like she's already been media trained. Not when she looks at adults not with childlike curiosity, but with cautious awareness. As if she knows exactly where the cameras are. One kitchen worker, who asked to remain anonymous, later told an indie journalist this: "I've been around kids my whole life. That girl? She wasn't 2. She wasn't even 4. I'd say 6, maybe 7. She didn't fidget, didn't ask questions, just stood still when the cameras rolled, then walked with purpose when they stopped. Like she knew it was all pretend." That observation was repeated again and again. In kitchen staff chats, in quiet parking lot conversations, in hurried text messages after the event. The question was no longer, "Did you notice?" It was, "Who is she?" The situation escalated quickly. By the 10-minute mark, the kitchen's volunteer coordinator, a woman known for her calm demeanor, looked visibly tense. She whispered something to a fellow staffer. That staffer turned to his supervisor. Within minutes, Meghan's personal PR handler was intercepting conversations. And then, someone made a mistake. A member of the Archwell media team, perhaps assuming everyone in the room was under NDA, left an open iPad on a prep counter. On the screen, a list of media talking points. One curious line stood out. "Avoid direct references to children's ages unless pre-approved." Wait, what? Who pre-approves a toddler's age? From that moment, doubt transformed into suspicion. Because here's what we now know. Multiple volunteers questioned Lilibet's age within the first 10 minutes of her arrival. One intern, working as a photography assistant, allegedly asked a handler, "Is that really Lily?" and was told, "Focus on framing, not questions." A coordinator reportedly overheard Meghan snapping at someone behind the scenes for asking, "Can Lily sit down with the toddlers?" A chef, while plating rice bowls, claimed to overhear someone from the Sussex team say, "It's fine, she can pass. We'll be out of here in under 2 hours." Pass. Pass for what? Or for who? The environment had shifted. By minute 11, what should have been a feel-good afternoon of service had become a silent exercise in damage control. Let's pause for a second. Ask yourself, if this had been any other celebrity couple, if Beyoncé or the Clooneys or even the Obamas had brought a child to a charity event, would the discussion afterward be about the child's age? No, because normally, it's obvious. Children are children. They fidget. They cry. They stumble. They ask silly questions. They don't speak in rehearsed phrases or avoid spontaneous contact, unless something is being orchestrated. And now, insiders are confirming that the LA visit was planned down to the minute, including the children's movement, their positions in photographs, the script for Meghan's opening remarks, the hand signals used by handlers to direct photographers when to click and when to pause. This wasn't a visit. This was a show. And the audience, the volunteers, were supposed to stay quiet, smiling in the background. They were extras, until one of them couldn't take it anymore. Let me introduce you to Marisol. Not her real name. For her protection. She's a 42-year-old single mother of 3. She's worked at the LA kitchen for nearly 6 years. That day, she was assigned to coordinate children's activities in the side room, coloring books, snacks, simple games. She wasn't supposed to speak to the Sussex children directly, but Lilibet wandered in, unattended. Marisol greeted her kindly, offering a plush dinosaur toy. Lilibet didn't take it. Instead, she said something that chilled Marisol to her core. I'm not supposed to play right now. They need me in the picture. Think about that. A child, supposedly 2 years old, refusing to play because she needed to be in the picture. Not in the photo. Not take a picture, but the picture. Marisol watched as Lilibet adjusted her own coat collar and walked back toward the main hallway. Head high, eyes forward. She moved like a pageant girl, Marisol would later recount. Like she'd been told this moment mattered more than being a kid. Later that night, Marisol sent a message to a friend who worked part-time for a local gossip blog. The message read, "They brought a kid. Called her Lilibet. She's at least 6 or 7. I'm sure of it." Everyone was too scared to say it out loud. But it was weird. Too weird. I think something's going on. That message was screenshotted, then leaked, then reposted, and then everything exploded. Because that's the moment the Lilibet age theory went viral. Reddit threads emerged. Side-by-side photo comparisons flooded Twitter. Amateur voice analysts dissected clips. TikTok creators posted frame-by-frame breakdowns of Lilibet's stride, posture, and hand movements. And someone dug deeper. A British tabloid received an anonymous tip pointing to a private school registry in Santa Barbara. A girl, with Meghan's maiden name listed as guardian, allegedly enrolled 5 years ago. Coincidence? Or confirmation? Here's the kicker. After this information started gaining traction, Archwell's media team scrubbed all digital traces of the LA kitchen visit within 24 hours. Photos were pulled. Captions were changed. Comments were disabled. And the kitchen? Issued a short, sterile statement. "We are grateful for the visit from the Sussex family. No further comment." No further comment? Why would a charity, one that thrives on publicity and donor visibility, go radio silent after a royal appearance? Unless they'd been told to. Strongly. And who has the power to silence a charity? Not Meghan. Not Harry. But someone higher up. Someone watching closely. Someone very aware of what happens when a story gets too big, too fast. And yet, for all the palace's silence, for all Archwell's deletions, the damage was done. Because the people who were in that kitchen, they saw what they saw. They heard the child speak. They saw her walk, carry herself, correct adults, reject playtime, monitor the cameras. And most importantly, they felt the tension. That kind of thing can't be edited out. Not by PR. Not by filters. Not by palace pressure. In the end, the truth has a funny way of leaking out. Especially when it's hiding in plain sight. And if Lilibet isn't 2 years old, if she's really 7, then the story we've been told about pregnancies, births, and royal bloodlines starts to look very different. But what if this isn't just about a kitchen visit? What if the deception runs far deeper, going all the way back to Frogmore Cottage, Oprah's garden, and the very first photo of baby Archie? Because just as the kitchen volunteers began connecting dots, another theory surfaced. And it all starts with a woman who hasn't been seen publicly in years, Jessica Mulroney. And what she knows could blow the entire thing wide open. What if the child we've been told is named Lilibet Diana, born in 2021, introduced in filtered black and white photos, cloaked in secrecy from her first breath, was actually born in 2016? What if the entire narrative was backdated? Because that's exactly what this 7-year-old theory is alleging. And it's no longer confined to anonymous Twitter threads or conspiracy corners of Reddit. It's gained traction. And now, journalists, genealogists, and even AI facial recognition analysts are starting to pay attention. But how does a child lose 5 years? How does a public figure, a global name like Meghan Markle, manage to convince the world her child was just born when, according to growing whispers, that child may have already been walking, talking, and even attending school? Let's step back. Following the LA kitchen visit, public interest exploded. Theories multiplied. Internet sleuths began combing through every piece of available data. Old interviews, baby bump photos, birth announcements, even paparazzi snapshots once dismissed as irrelevant. And the inconsistencies are chilling. Start with the basics. Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor was allegedly born on June 4, 2021 at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. That's the official story. But to this day, not a single member of the press has seen a birth certificate with unredacted medical records. No doctor has gone on the record. No photos of Meghan entering or leaving the hospital. No ambulance. No security footage. No statements from nurses. Compare that to Princess Charlotte's birth, or even Archie's. The media circled hospitals. Timelines were airtight. Royal correspondents were briefed. There was ceremony, structure, procedure. With Lilibet? Silence. Then came the photo discrepancies. The first official image of Lilibet was released 6 months after her birth, and it wasn't a press photo. It was an overly staged family moment, taken by a photographer friend, with warm tones and a soft blur. Lilibet's face was only partially visible. Why the delay? Why the filters? Why the insistence on maintaining this distance? In December 2022, Netflix released the Sussexes docuseries. It included a few more photos of Lilibet. But even then, something felt off. Her face appeared different across shots. Her size varied. In one clip, she looked like a toddler. In another, more like a kindergartner. Meghan's voiceover added to the confusion. She's such a light, so curious about the world. So wise. Wise. For a child barely 18 months old, royal watchers started digging. One amateur genealogist in Scotland ran a facial age estimation algorithm on Lilibet's known photos. Using frame-by-frame analysis from the Netflix series, she input the images into an AI age progression tool. The result? Estimated biological age, 5.9 years. Not 2, not 3, nearly 6. And that's when another user, this one based in Vancouver, posted an eerie claim on a private forum. I worked in a Montessori preschool in Toronto in 2019. A girl named Lily Windsor was enrolled briefly under a pseudonym. She had Meghan's cheekbones. Same voice. Same mannerisms. They pulled her out after 3 months, claiming relocation. True. Unverified. But suddenly, more anonymous stories began to pour in. Stories of a child seen with Meghan long before 2021. At airports. In yoga studios. At private homes in Los Angeles. The common thread? No media coverage. No announcements. Always shielded, and always explained away. But perhaps the most damning clue came from the UK. A palace insider, described only as deeply embedded within royal administrative circles, leaked a document to an international tabloid. It wasn't a bombshell. In fact, it was subtle. Just a line item from an internal registry. It listed royal descendants by date of birth, titles, and bloodline confirmations. Archie's entry? Present. Verified. Lilibet's? Absent. Not pending. Not withheld. Simply not listed. That document reignited theories that have plagued Meghan since 2019. Theories of a secret child, or worse, a recycled identity. Could it be that Lilibet wasn't born in 2021, but was hidden, off the books, until she could be introduced under controlled optics? The implications are staggering. If the theory is true, it would suggest a conspiracy spanning multiple years, involving PR firms, medical records, stage photography, and media collusion. It would mean Meghan and Harry retroactively assigned a birth date to a child already walking and talking. But the question is why? Why fabricate a timeline? Why stage a late birth? Why erase 5 years of a child's life, only to reintroduce her as a royal toddler? There are several prevailing theories. 1. The surrogacy cover-up theory. This theory posits that Meghan did not give birth to either Archie or Lilibet, and that both were born via surrogacy. However, due to archaic royal bloodline rules, this would disqualify the children from certain titles unless handled discreetly. Thus, Lilibet, possibly born via a surrogate years earlier, was held from the public until the Sussexes could leave royal duties and stage her arrival in the U.S. 2. The custody complication theory. Another theory suggests that Lilibet was born during a time when Meghan was still under tight royal control, possibly while still married, possibly even before the wedding, and that legal custody issues prevented her from being introduced until the Sussexes broke free. Wild. Yes. Impossible? Not necessarily. 3. The branding optics theory. Perhaps the most cynical theory of all, the Lilibet product needed to arrive after the Oprah interview, after the Netflix deal, after the Spotify millions. A new baby, introduced post-exile, would symbolize rebirth, healing, distance from the crown. If Lilibet had been introduced in 2016, she would have been linked to Meghan's early struggles. But in 2021, she was hope, innocence, future, a brand asset. Let that sit. What kind of parent or public figure backdates a child's life for branding? And yet, that's what growing numbers of people believe has happened. Still not convinced? Let's revisit something that was almost forgotten. Jessica Mulroney, Meghan's once best friend, her stylist, her right-hand woman during the early royal years. They were inseparable, until suddenly, they weren't. In 2020, Jessica was embroiled in a racism scandal. Meghan cut ties overnight. No statement, no defense, just a silent erasure of one of her closest allies. But some believe the breakup had nothing to do with the scandal. Instead, insiders say it had everything to do with what Jessica knew. Back in 2016, Jessica was seen frequently with Meghan, often with a child in tow. A child who wasn't one of Jessica's own. A child whose appearance bore a striking resemblance to, you guessed it, Lilibet. Photos from those outings have now been pulled from multiple digital archives. Why? Because too many people were making the connection. Here's a quote from a former photographer who once worked with the Mulroneys. There were always questions about whose child that was. Sometimes we were told it was a cousin. Other times, we were told it was a friend's daughter. But the way Meghan looked at her, protective, always shielding her from paparazzi, it didn't feel like babysitting. It felt like motherhood. And now, we circle back to the LA kitchen. To the child who looked too tall, spoke too clearly, and stood too still. To the staffers who dared whisper the unspeakable. She's not two. To the email leaks referencing internal panic. Age is becoming a problem again. To the stunned reactions. The filtered photos. The hasty departure. It all fits. The real story isn't about a kind-hearted family helping at a soup kitchen. It's about a crack in the illusion. A mask slipping, for just long enough to expose the machinery behind it all. So now we ask you directly, do you believe Lilibet was born in 2021? Or have we all been played? Because in the next chapter, we're pulling the curtain even further. And it begins with a file, a string of panicked messages, and one subject line. This visit is not what it seems. What do you do when a lie is on the verge of slipping through your hands? If you're Meghan Markle, you don't wait. You get ahead of it. You tighten the optics. You activate the team. You lock down every angle, every narrative, every breath the public is allowed to take. Because this isn't just a PR strategy, it's a fortress. And inside that fortress is a room filled not with flowers or family photos or children's toys, but with call sheets, crisis plans, digital blacklists, and silence contracts. And on the day of the LA kitchen visit, that fortress went into overdrive. It began the night before. According to a leaked email thread first circulated on an encrypted chat server and later obtained by freelance digital reporters, the planning for the LA kitchen appearance was anything but casual. It involved no fewer than 3 private security briefings, 2 NDAs for temporary kitchen staff, and one ominous line that now feels impossible to ignore. Subject: confidential, family exposure protocol. Ensure no staff or volunteers engage directly with either minor unless directed. Avoid all age-related commentary. No references to past events involving children. All external footage to be routed through Archwell oversight. Let's pause for a second. Why would any of this be necessary for a charity visit with children? Why the gag orders? Why the editing mandates? Why the legal armor around 2 supposedly innocent toddlers? Because deep down, the Sussex machine knows. The illusion is paper thin, and it all traces back to Meghan's PR command center. Let's unpack it. Sources from within the Archwell ecosystem, many of them ex-employees, freelancers, and partners who have since broken ranks, describe Meghan's PR operation as one of the most meticulously managed celebrity machines in existence. More tightly wound than Beyoncé's. More curated than the Kardashians. There's a reason for that. Meghan doesn't have the luxury of letting reality slip through. Not when she's crafted herself as both victim and visionary. Not when her brand demands she be relatable and untouchable, all at once. So every appearance, every project, Every Instagram post is subjected to an exhaustive internal pipeline. Here's how it works. Step 1. Optics mapping. Before any event is confirmed, a visual storyboard is created. How will Meghan appear? Will Harry be passive or warm? Will the children be featured or withheld? What is the emotional temperature of the moment? Staff refer to this as narrative coding. Each appearance is assigned a sentiment goal: optimism, resilience, elegance, motherhood, or in this case, redemption through service. Yes, they literally script the emotional response they want from the public. Step 2. Persona alignment. Each team member receives a brief about how Meghan's public persona should be presented. They're told which phrases to use, which expressions to encourage, even which photos to avoid retweeting if they don't fit the tone. For the kitchen visit, the alignment goal was reintegration with community, soft power, matriarch energy. That phrase, matriarch energy, comes up again and again in leaked memos. Meghan doesn't want to be seen as a struggling mother. She wants to be seen as a powerful maternal figure, overseeing both family and philanthropy. And nothing reinforces that image more than a calm, camera-ready Lilibet at her side. Even if Lilibet isn't actually a toddler. Even if she's 7. Step 3. Control layering. This is where it gets especially disturbing. Control layering refers to the redundant barriers put in place to ensure the event goes exactly as planned, regardless of reality. For the LA kitchen visit, those layers included 2 separate camera crews, 1 internal, 1 neutral, but under contract, an NDA stack distributed to all on-site volunteers, an advanced team that spent 48 hours inspecting the kitchen for unfavorable lighting angles, pre-staged interactions, scripted conversations Meghan was to have with staff, later leaked as candid moments, and most chilling, a live media monitor who sat in a backroom scanning social media during the visit in case anything went viral prematurely. Think about that. They were monitoring hashtags in real time as the charity work was unfolding. One of the interns who spoke to independent reporters after quitting her contract described it as like being inside a media panic room. No one was allowed to breathe unless Meghan's team cleared it. I had to ask permission to repost a smiling photo of a rice bowl, just in case it made the wrong person look too relatable. Too relatable? That's not PR. That's a cult of image. And when things started to fall apart, when whispers about Lilibet's age began circulating within the kitchen staff, that panic room activated its last resort, the cleanup protocol. Let's look at the second leaked email thread from Archewell's Crisis Communications Director. Subject: Urgent. Lily's age is causing issues again. Scrub direct age references from captions. Shift focus to community impact. Use only wide-angle shots. Archive internal footage with restricted metadata tags. NO distribution until green light from Marcom Legal. Let's pause. Lily's age is causing issues again. That's not the wording of a one-off misunderstanding. That's the language of a recurring problem. Meaning, this wasn't the first time Meghan and her team were concerned people might notice something about Lilibet. This wasn't just a kitchen anomaly. It's a pattern. There are reports of similar cleanups after the Invictus Games footage, their Montecito Christmas card release, the Netflix documentary scenes involving backyard playtime. Each time, observant viewers noticed something that didn't align. A slip in age, size, vocabulary, demeanor. Each time, the digital footprint shrank within 24 hours. And now we're seeing the strategy in real time. Within just hours of the LA kitchen visit, social media managers began issuing silent takedowns. Volunteers who had reposted photos were politely but firmly asked to remove them. Captions were rewritten. Keywords changed. Mentions of Lilibet were erased entirely on some platforms. And here's the kicker. Meghan's personal team issued a press summary that excluded the children altogether. Only Archewell's official account used Lilibet's name, and even then, just once, buried deep in the caption. A beautiful day with family and community. No age, no quote, no description, just enough to acknowledge, but not enough to verify. Why? Because the less detail you offer, the harder it is to be caught in a lie. And Meghan's entire media empire is built around controlling perception to the second. It's why she dropped Suits-themed content right before the show went viral again on Netflix. It's why she coordinated her children's public moments only around crisis points. Spotify backlash, Netflix flops, podcast cancellations. Lilibet, in this context, isn't a child. She's a tool, a symbol, a placeholder in a myth that's becoming harder and harder to sell. So when that myth cracked, when one staffer in a soup kitchen noticed that Lilibet wasn't acting like a toddler, the entire machine had to shift into crisis mode. And fast. But here's the twist. No matter how fast a machine runs, it only takes one leak to flood the whole system. And that's exactly what happened next. Because someone from within the PR fortress had had enough. And in turn, young, disillusioned, with access. And when she forwarded a single chain of emails to a friend, she unknowingly dropped the match that would burn through the Sussex PR firewall. The subject line? This visit is not what it seems. Every empire falls the same way, not with a bang, but with a whisper. And sometimes, all it takes is one person. One quiet act of defiance. One email forwarded to the wrong person, or, depending on your view, exactly the right one. Because that's what happened inside Archwell's sleek Santa Barbara office the night after the LA kitchen visit. And that's how everything started to unravel. It was just past midnight when the email appeared in a private inbox belonging to an LA-based entertainment assistant, a trusted friend of the sender. The subject line? This visit is not what it seems. No introduction, no warning, just that one sentence, followed by an attached chain of internal emails, raw, unedited, and bearing the unmistakable digital signature of Archwell's media infrastructure. The sender? An intern we'll call C. She had been working on the LA Kitchen Coordination Team, part of Archwell's rotational media fellow program. A recent graduate in communications. Bright, observant, and, up until that day, a true believer in the Sussex brand. But what she saw behind the scenes shook her. In her own words, as later published anonymously on a whistleblower blog, it stopped feeling like storytelling. It started feeling like erasure. We were asked not to lie, but to delete anything that felt real. I watched grown adults scrub the truth from a child's identity in real time. Let's unpack what she sent. The email chain begins about 72 hours before the LA visit. It's a coordination thread titled, Kitchen Shoot, Family Service Narrative V3. In it, PR team members bounce around staging ideas, camera setups, and proposed messaging for the press release. Fairly typical, until you scroll down to a comment from a staffer marked as RR. Reminder, we're still working within the 2YO framework for Lily. Team must ensure this is consistent across all materials. Any discrepancies, size, dialogue, etc., must be edited out in post. Wait, still working within? Discrepancies must be edited out? That's not storytelling. That's containment. It implies, flat out, that the narrative of Lilibet being 2 years old was a conscious framework, not a fact. A script, actively monitored, maintained, and retrofitted around reality. In another reply, a media manager, initials T.L., raises a concern. Photos from the last prep shoot suggest Lily appears taller than expected. Possible to frame from waist up only when next to toddlers. Waist up only. Strategic cropping. Optical illusion. This is how fragile the lie had become. So fragile, they had to manage camera angles like stage illusions, just to keep the audience from seeing what was right in front of them. But it gets worse. Later in the chain, about 8 hours before the visit, one team member appears to panic. The email is curt, rushed, flagged high priority. Subject, urgent, age optics. We've got a problem. One of the volunteers has a child in the same age group Lily is supposed to be in. Side-by-sides might not hold up. Advise repositioning or limited exposure. Let that sink in. They weren't trying to protect a child's privacy. They were trying to avoid being caught in a visual contradiction. An unfiltered side-by-side photo of a real 2-year-old next to Lilibet could expose everything. So what did they do? They moved Lilibet. That's why, as multiple volunteers noted, she was never seated with the other toddlers. She wasn't asked to color, wasn't invited into playtime, wasn't shown in any wide group shots with children her own age. Instead, she hovered close to Meghan, stayed near staffers who had been briefed, avoided unfiltered interaction. And here's where it all breaks open. In the final email of the thread, the one C forwarded with her message. A senior team lead writes, If volunteers ask about age, smile, and redirect. Reminder, this visit is a sentiment driver, not a fact drop. A sentiment driver, not a fact drop. Let that phrase haunt you for a moment, because it confirms what many have suspected all along, that Meghan and Harry's entire operation isn't about truth. It's about feelings, emotional manipulation, carefully cultivated moments designed not to inform, but to persuade. And Lilibet? She's not a person in this equation. She's a data point, a tool to evoke empathy, a symbol to be deployed when public perception dips too far below the red line. The moment that email hit the inbox of the entertainment assistant, the assistant reportedly gasped aloud. "I knew I had to get it out," she would later tell an anonymous source. "I couldn't sit on that. I couldn't let people keep believing the image was real when the team behind it knew it wasn't." Within hours, the emails were uploaded to a private, password-protected whistleblower forum. They were soon picked up by a royal commentary blog, then screenshot and circulated across Telegram, Reddit, and eventually, as all scandals do, TikTok. And once TikTok got a hold of it, it was over. Influencers with millions of followers began reading the emails aloud on camera. Side-by-side videos comparing Lilibet to verified 2-year-olds were everywhere. Audio analysis, walking comparisons, theories, timelines, even facial AI overlays. But more powerful than the speculation was the realization. This wasn't a theory anymore. It was coordinated messaging, proof of manipulation, receipts. And how did Meghan's team respond? Exactly as you'd expect. Archewell issued a vague, defensive statement. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex remain committed to service, community, and uplifting stories of compassion. We will not respond to baseless speculation meant to distract from meaningful work. Classic deflection. No denial. No clarification. Just a blanket statement of intent that conveniently ignores the very real, very specific leak that had just detonated online. And yet, insiders say the panic behind closed doors was real and immediate. A lockdown was enforced within Archewell. Staff accounts were reviewed. Devices were confiscated for internal audits. The intern disappeared, not fired, just removed. Quietly. No statement. No social media traces. A ghost. One staff member, speaking under anonymity, claimed Meghan was shaking during an emergency video call. She just kept saying, they weren't supposed to notice. They weren't supposed to notice. But they did. Because real people, with real eyes, real instincts, and real memories, always notice when something doesn't make sense. And when a smiling child looks too poised, too prepared, too distant from the very age she's meant to represent, the brain kicks in. The lie no longer lands. Here's the part Meghan and Harry underestimated. People may buy a narrative once, twice maybe, but if you keep pulling the same trick, the disappearing baby, the over-filtered toddler, the never-seen surrogate, the vanishing birth records, eventually the audience doesn't clap anymore. They squint, they whisper, and then they whistleblow. Because you can manipulate the press. You can manage your fans. But you can't always control the intern. And now, the entire world knows. Even Meghan's own team doesn't believe Lilibet is 2. Which begs the next question. If the child is 7, if her life has been edited, rebranded, and staged to suit a public timeline, then who raised her during those missing years? And why hasn't anyone from the royal family ever said her name out loud? Next up, we revisit the woman who vanished from Meghan's inner circle without a trace. The one person who may have known Lilibet before she was Lilibet. Jessica Mulroney. And what she's hiding could destroy the entire Sussex fairy tale. Every fairy tale has a missing chapter. A page torn out. A name redacted. A face blurred just enough to make you wonder. What was she doing there? And why did she disappear? In Meghan Markle's story, that missing name is Jessica Mulroney. Once her ride or die. Her stylist. Her inner circle. Her right-hand woman. The godmother-like figure who stood by Meghan through fame, scrutiny, and the most volatile years of her royal rise. And then, nothing. Vanished. No farewell post. No thank you caption. No public fallout. Just silence. But now, in light of the Lilibet age scandal, that silence is deafening. Because if there's one person who might have known Meghan's timeline better than anyone, one person who may have seen Lilibet before the world knew her name, it's Jessica. And what she may be hiding. could collapse the Sussex mythology once and for all. Let's rewind. Before there was a Duchess, there was a rising star on the Toronto social scene. Meghan, still starring in Suits, wasn't yet a household name. She was American, ambitious, and navigating a tricky blend of fame and isolation. And Jessica? Jessica was her anchor. As a celebrity stylist married to Ben Mulroney, son of a former Canadian Prime Minister, Jessica had clout. Doors opened for her. She introduced Meghan to the upper crust of Toronto society: designers, influencers, power couples. But their bond wasn't just professional. It was intimate. Jessica was present for Meghan's first Suits-era breakdowns. She allegedly helped orchestrate Meghan's fashion evolution. She attended early charity events as Meghan's quiet fixer. And crucially, according to multiple sources, Jessica was the first person Meghan confided in when her relationship with Prince Harry began. But that's not all she knew. In late 2016, a full year before Meghan and Harry's engagement, Jessica was seen multiple times with Meghan and a young girl. This girl, according to paparazzi photos now scrubbed from public databases, appeared to be between 1 and 2 years old. This was well before Archie, before Frogmore, before Oprah. At the time, tabloids dismissed the child as a family friend's daughter or one of Jessica's nieces. But now, with the mounting evidence that Lilibet may be much older than her assigned age, these old photos take on an entirely different tone. What if that child was Lilibet? Let's review what we know. Photos exist, now suppressed, of Meghan, Jessica, and a toddler girl in Toronto in 2016. Meghan is seen shielding the child's face, avoiding paparazzi angles, and at one point, handing her over to Jessica like a mother passing off a daughter. According to a Toronto-based photographer, when asked who the child was, Jessica's team gave inconsistent answers, once calling her a playdate friend, another time saying a godchild. Meghan never addressed the child's identity. Why? Because if the child was Lilibet, or a child who would later be presented as Lilibet, then Meghan had a child years before the public was told. That alone would have been tabloid gold. But the implications go far deeper. Theory: the cover-up began in Toronto. Multiple insiders, stylists, assistants, even an ex-PR intern, claim Meghan spoke about motherhood long before Archie's birth. Not in hypothetical terms, not as a dream, but in the present tense. She'd say things like, "It's hard finding quiet places for her to nap," or "We don't let her have screen time." But it was never clear who her was, one stylist recounted. Another insider recalls Meghan flying to Los Angeles for several weekends in 2017, often without Harry, and always refusing to disclose the purpose of the trips. Some believed she was visiting her mother. Others thought she was quietly consulting lawyers about royal contracts. But now, some think she was visiting her daughter. And Jessica was the only one who knew. So why did they split? Fast forward to 2020. Jessica Mulroney becomes embroiled in a scandal after a public spat with a black influencer over white privilege and performative activism. The story goes viral. Meghan, who had recently spoken about racism in the royal family, cuts ties immediately. But this decision raised eyebrows. Fast. Because until then, Meghan had defended Jessica against intense scrutiny. Their children had playdates. Jessica's twins were page boys at Meghan's royal wedding. The Duchess had even stayed with the Mulroneys during her early dates with Harry. So why the sudden cutoff? According to a former Archwell associate, the influencer scandal wasn't the real reason. It was simply the perfect excuse. There was already tension, the associate said. Jessica knew too much. She had too many old photos, too many memories, too many untraceable conversations. It's possible, even likely, that Jessica wanted to remain loyal. That she had no intention of betraying Meghan. But Meghan doesn't operate on trust. She operates on risk management. And Jessica had become a liability. She was too close to the original timeline. Too close to the real age of a certain child. So Meghan did what any image-obsessed brand builder would do. She erased her. No goodbye, no statement, no public reconciliation, just silence. And the public was expected to move on. But people noticed. Bloggers, royal watchers, commentators. They remembered the old photos, the chemistry, the proximity. And now, in the wake of the Lilibet age theory, they're remembering something else. In late 2020, months before Lilibet's official birth, Jessica posted a cryptic Instagram story of a young girl blowing out birthday candles. The caption? Time flies. You'll always be our little flower. No tags, no names, no context. But the girl? She bore a stunning resemblance to Lilibet. The post was deleted within an hour. And when asked, Jessica's rep claimed it was an old family friend. But here's where it gets chilling. That photo, once run through facial recognition software, was compared by digital sleuths to the only known full-face photo of Lilibet from her second birthday portrait. The match? 93.2% similarity. Let that number sink in. The same tech used by law enforcement to identify missing persons now suggests that Lilibet may have been photographed well before her public birth. And Jessica? She's refused all interviews since the Sussex split. She's gone dark on press. Only occasional style posts. No royal content. No comment on Meghan. No leaks. No memoirs. Because if she talks, she'll be buried in lawsuits. She'll be branded as unstable. She'll be destroyed, quietly, but efficiently. And yet, insiders believe she may have already spoken. An anonymous source who claims to have worked with Jessica during 2021 alleges that Jessica kept a private journal. One she occasionally dictated notes into using a voice app. Those dictations, reportedly backed up to a now-deleted cloud account, include entries labeled M and L. One entry, dated February 2021, allegedly reads, "She says she's due this summer, but I've seen her face when she looks at the old photos. There's a secret there. I know it. If true, that's a smoking gun. A witness. A confidant. A woman who saw too much and was silenced too soon. Jessica may never come forward. But her fingerprints, digital, emotional, historical, are all over this story. Because before there was a royal exit, a Netflix deal, or a day of service at an LA kitchen, there was a child. A child who laughed, walked, and played before the world ever saw her face. A child whose existence may have been edited, backdated, and weaponized to serve a narrative. And Jessica? She was there. From the beginning. And maybe she still is. But what came next would take things even further. Because as speculation grew louder, one brave soul inside the LA kitchen decided to speak out, directly. And her story would confirm everyone's worst fears. Every lie eventually finds its witness. Not the journalists or the bloggers. Not the executives or the image consultants. But the regular people. The ones who see the truth not because they're looking for it, but because it's standing right in front of them. And this time, it was standing in an apron, holding a tray of rice bowls. Her name won't be found in the press releases. She wasn't photographed, interviewed, or name-checked. But she was there, from the first step of Meghan and Harry's entrance into the LA kitchen to the final moment they slipped out the side door, leaving behind confusion, tension, and questions. For privacy and safety, we'll call her Elena. Elena has worked at the community kitchen for nearly a decade. She's seen celebrities come and go. Musicians, actors, even a few politicians. She's used to photo ops, to guarded entourages, to curated charity. But this felt different. And weeks later, after the photos had vanished, after the captions had changed, after the Archwell team had swept through digital history with disinfecting precision, Elena couldn't keep quiet. She reached out to a small but growing podcast known for breaking unfiltered stories. The Royal Split. No ads. No fluff. Just anonymous sources and raw truth. And what she told them changed everything. Let's start with her first impression. I remember Meghan walking in first. She had this perfectly neutral expression, not cold, not warm, just staged. Her smile turned on as soon as the cameras clicked. But what really caught my eye was the little girl holding her hand. Elena assumed it was Meghan's daughter, until the girl spoke. She looked up at another volunteer who had offered her juice and said, clear as day, "No, thank you. I don't do sugar drinks on weekdays." Pause. A toddler doesn't talk like that. A toddler doesn't negotiate dietary structure or say weekdays. A toddler might cry, babble, point, not politely decline based on a nutrition regimen. And Elena wasn't the only one who heard it. The kitchen was full of people. Volunteers glanced at each other. One of them, a college-age girl helping clean trays, muttered, "Wait, she's two." Elena didn't think much of it at first. Kids develop differently. Some talk early, some don't. But as the visit unfolded, The evidence began to pile up. This little girl didn't move like a toddler. She stood still when told, never fidgeted, never got distracted, and she wasn't holding a toy or looking for attention. She was performing. One of the strangest moments came during a scheduled family engagement activity. Meghan, Harry, Archie, and Lilibet were supposed to pack snack bags together with kids from other local families. The setup was perfect. A long table, cameras in the corner, brightly colored baskets of food. But when it came time for Lilibet to sit with the toddlers, she didn't. She walked around the table, didn't sit, didn't touch the crayons. She just looked at the other kids like they confused her. According to Elena, the child's reaction was one of detachment, not shyness, but disconnection. As if she didn't understand why the other children were squirming, grabbing crayons, or babbling nonsense. At one point, she looked at Meghan and said, "Can I stand next to you instead? I don't want to get messy." Elena told the podcast host. That's when I knew. That girl wasn't a toddler. She was older, probably 6, maybe 7. I've raised 3 of my own, and I've worked with hundreds. There's a rhythm to how they move. That girl wasn't in toddler rhythm. There were more signs. She used full sentences. She adjusted her own coat when it slipped off her shoulder. She whispered something to Archie that made him giggle, something about editing their faces in the video. Editing their faces. What 2-year-old says that? By now, even volunteers not on kitchen duty were whispering. In the corner, in the hallway, in the parking lot after the event. One older staffer, someone who had been with the organization since its founding, told Elena.